"Read that," he said. The Count read it. "Well, well," said he. "Did you see the postscript?" "I did indeed. Se alle e della mattina le 4.000 piastre non sono mi nelle mie mani. Alla 7 il conte Alberto avrà cassetto di Luigi Vampa." "What do you think of that?" inquired Franz. "Have you the money he demands?" "Yes, all but 800 piastres." The Count went to his secrétaire, opened it, and pulling out a drawer filled with gold, said to Franz, "I hope you will not offend me by applying to anyone but myself." "You see, on the contrary, I come to you first and instantly," replied Franz, "and I thank you. Have what you will." And he made a sign to Franz to take what he pleased. "It is absolutely necessary, then, to send the money to Luigi Vampa?" asked the young man, looking fixedly in his turn at the Count. "Judge for yourself," replied he. "The postscript is explicit. I think that if you would take the trouble of reflecting, you could find a way of simplifying the negotiation," said Franz. "How so?" returned the Count with surprise. "If we were to go together to Luigi Vampa, I'm sure he would not refuse you Albert's freedom. What influence could I possibly have over a bandit? Have you not just rendered him a service that can never be forgotten?" "What is that?" "Have you not saved Peppino's life?" "Well," said the Count, "who told you that?" "No matter, I know it." The Count knit his brows and remained silent an instant. "And if I went to seek Vampa, would you accompany me, if my society would not be disagreeable?" I said it before, and I'll say it again, these big dialogue passages really tell me more about character and story than a lot of the actual prose does. Particularly the last part of today's passage with Franz not 100% confronting Dante here, but in a state of, do we call it panic, agitation, urgency, is playing one of his cards, telling Dante that he knows he has an association with Vampa, and confirming my questioning of myself as to whether or not I had made the connection in my head that it was Vampa in the Colosseum, making it explicit that it was. Good to know that, finally, without having to go back and reread things. But he's playing the card and not explaining how he knows in order to get Dante to help him out here. I would imagine if you're Dante, and assuming you didn't plan for that, it's got to be a little disconcerting to know that of all of your carefully laid plans, someone knows a little bit more than you anticipated, because that's going to make that person harder to manipulate, might compromise some of your future plans. Sometimes they say that silence can be a novel in itself, and that line there after Franz says, "No matter, I know it," after, revealing how he knows about Peppino, the line there that says, "The Count knit his brows and remained silent an instant." What's going through Dante's mind there? I would say we'll find out by continuing to read, but we are given no insight into Dante's inner life anymore, so I don't know that that's true. A couple of other things not related to today's passage that I just want to touch on real quick. I did the math, and not today, but in 2 days, so not tomorrow, but the day after, will be our 500th episode. That is exciting. I can't wait, and I've decided what to do as a little celebration of it in connection with what we're doing on the Patreon, reading the 7 Voyages of Sinbad from the Tales of 1001 Nights. I'm going to take some time to walk through the connections between that story, Dumas, and the Count of Monte Cristo. I will mention this now, though, that I discovered this on Odyssey, the other show that I do where we read a page of Homer's The Odyssey every day, how coincidental it is that I chose this story and I chose the Odyssey to read a page a day out of, and that Tales from 1001 Nights, particularly the Sinbad stories, seem to be a nexus between these two things. The Odyssey has clearly laid a template that the 7 Voyages of Sinbad is just pulling from wholesale. The Polyphemus episode with the Cyclops shows up in 7 Voyages of Sinbad, getting waylaid on islands by ships, societies of exotic peoples, making crews of those ships forgetful and keeping them there. There's so many parallels that it's impossible not to look at Tales of 1001 Nights and go, oh, you just lifted straight from the Odyssey. So the fact that Tales of 1001 Nights would then go on to influence Dumas and this story creates this like direct line between the Count of Monte Cristo and the Odyssey that I would never have expected. And it's one of those things like whenever you, like when you buy a blue car and then you're like, oh man, I've never seen a blue car. And then suddenly after you buy it, you see blue cars all over the place. I'm sure there's a term for that. I'm wondering if that's this case where those connections are all over the place and I just happen to hyperfixate on them because of the nature of these two stories we're doing, or if it is just a wild coincidence. I'm not sure. But in 2 days, I will do a deep dive on how the Tales of 1001 Nights has influenced Dumas and the Count of Monte Cristo specifically. If you want, you can go over to patreon.com/gruntworkpod. And I don't think all 7 voyages have yet been published, but I believe it's still within the supporter month window. We've extended it to June 10th for you to be able to go over and listen to at least the first 3 or 4 voyages if you want to do that before our episode in 2 days. Episode 500. There was something else I was going to say. What was it? Yes, just a reminder, since it's been a few episodes since I mentioned it. Please leave a comment on the YouTube channels if it's something that you actively use and listen to the show on. As I said before, I'm trying to just juggle a couple of overhead things due to capacity issues at the moment, and I need to know where to put my time and attention, best use of the resources available to me. Of course, if you can consider contributing to our Patreon, that would go a long way to making our overhead a little bit easier to handle, but I need to know if I can put the YouTube on a short hiatus while I get some stuff together without disrupting the experience of any of you who are actively listening day in and day out. So please reach out to me, let me know, and with that, let's continue with a little bit more of Chapter 37 of the Count of Monte Cristo. What's going to happen to Albert? Poor Albert. Until tomorrow. Okay, goodbye. The Countdown of Monte Cristo is part of the Gruntwork Podcast Network. This show is produced, edited, and hosted by Landon Solano. The original text of The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. Theme song by Magic Solo. If you want to support the show and others visit patreon.com. Thank you for listening. See you tomorrow.